Hello and welcome to another episode of Sensational She-Geek live from Yancey Street. Today is Monday, April 19th, 2021, and this is episode 14A. It is a beautiful Monday because I woke up this morning to the first teaser trailer for Shang-Chi having been released online. So I just added that in with all of this other fun stuff to talk about this week. As it is a Monday episode, of course, I will be talking first about the comic book pull list this week. Things that I am excited to read that are coming out in comics. Comic book release days this week are the 20th and the 21st of April for DC on the 20th and everything else on the 21st. And this week for the pull list, I will be spotlighting some comics that have characters, they're starring characters who are female, and they are also written by creators who are female. So I wanted to just bring those out since it is also the week that we have the Women of Marvel issue coming out, which was their kind of Women's History Month thing. We're just stretching Women's History Month through April here too. It's okay. After we finish the comic book pull list, I'm going to, of course, talk, as I always do, about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. This week we had episode 5, and there was a lot to discuss, so we will go over all of those things that happened, and there's only one more episode left, so it's really starting to hit the fan here. After that, we'll go straight into the Shang-Chi trailer. There's so many reasons to be excited about this, so I will be talking about that for a good while. Just really, really excellent stuff that we're getting into here. Once I'm finished there, I have some kind of brief notes on Marvel's plans for X-Men #1 starting in July, and then we'll wrap it up with a kind of brief CW DC show rumor / update about some things that I've heard, so we'll talk about that very briefly. It's going to be a beautiful episode. We're going to sweat it out about some really awesome stuff, some really nerdy stuff, some really cheesy superhero stuff, because that's what we do here. And it's not all superheroes, especially in the comic book pull list. We have some really great indie stuff to talk about today. So let's go ahead and get into that comic book pull list. If you are someone, though, who would kind of prefer to skip over me getting sweaty about comics for a while and just get straight into the Falcon and Winter Soldier Shang-Chi stuff, so if you skip to somewhere around 36 and a half minutes in, that's where I'll kind of stop talking about how iffy Justice League is and get back into Falcon and the Winter Soldier, if you'd like to do that. So 36 and a half minutes in. Otherwise, let's do comic books. For the spotlights this week, I'm going to, like I said, be covering some comics that are both starring women and written by women, and those are including Women of Marvel #1, Luna #3, Spider-Woman #11, Captain Marvel 28, and Monstress #33. Other things that we're going to be discussing off my pull list this week include The Many Deaths of Lila Starr, Unicorn, The Mighty Valkyries, Way of X, and those are all just the #1s. Then we have Jonah and the Unpossible Monsters, Eternals #4, X-Force #19, Catwoman #30, and I suppose Justice League #60, because why not? So let's go ahead and get started here at the top of that list with Women of Marvel #1. This is, of course, as I joked before, the every couple of years Marvel throws the female fans a bone. And this is our bone that we've been thrown now. You know, Fearless was one that was actually really fun a couple of years ago. It was a short series, I think 4 issues. You know, Mighty Defenders was one a few years before that. I think it was 2013 was Mighty Defenders, where they had all these female characters who were like fan favorites. Most of them had been on the Defenders in the past. Yeah, they like doing these series. I'm trying to remember. Heralds was one that was good. Obviously, Marvel Divas was one that was fantastic. They love throwing us these female starring things every now and then. And, you know, this certain dude bros like to say that it's terrible and pandering and stuff, but you know, it's only pandering because they don't do it more often. If they did it more often, it wouldn't be able to be considered pandering. But this Women of Marvel #1 is basically a showcase of female talent and characters. I have not been able to find any official list of all the creators and all the writers and who they're writing about or what their story's called or anything like that. The only thing I've been able to find is basically just a solicitation. Everything ends with "and more," so there's no like complete list I've been able to find. But based on the things that I have been able to find, we're having Louise Simonson, Nadia Shamus, Sophie Campbell, Elsa Sunyanson, that's definitely some kind of Northern Europe thing I do not know how to pronounce. Natasha Altirsi, I don't know how to pronounce lots of names, apparently. Ann Toole, Kaizama, Eleonora, Eleonora Carlini, Skylar Petridge, Joanna Estape, and I'm sure tons more. But those are just the writers, I believe. I believe those are just the writers. So there's also, of course, all the artists, which I believe are going to be all female artists as well. So characters, not quite sure about the characters on the cover. It's got Gamora, Jane Foster, Elektra, Shuri, and Storm. And then that's the main cover, and then the variant covers have one is Magic, one is Rogue, one is Storm, so she's most definitely a character I'd say that's probably in this. It's probably a safe guess. One is Scarlet Witch, well actually two are Scarlet Witch, and then there's another cover that the Amanda Connor cover has She-Hulk, Tigra, and Daughters of the Dragon, which is the Defenders women whose names I always forget. But it's not really sure who's actually going to be the characters in this. We can assume the ones on the main cover. We got the Jade Giantess, so assuming that's She-Hulk, right? I'm looking at the solicitation. We have a Captain Peggy Carter, so we know there's that. A Marrow story. Don't know what Ann Toole does. They just say she's making her debut. Natasha says she has a sword fist. She charges sword first. Maybe she's doing something with magic. I really wish they would announce this beforehand, because I feel like people could get a lot more hyped up about it if you know who the characters who are going to be in it beforehand. And the whole teams, the creative teams. You can really hop on board better that way. But they don't. So we take it when we can get it, these female run and female starring things, but they don't put them out except for probably once a year at the latest, so this is this year's. And I'm sure it'll be fantastic. It's just, I wish it was more. I always wish it was more, pretty much. I'm a greedy nerd. Next up, we'll talk about Luna number 3. Luna is a series by Maria LeVay that I have been completely in love with, head over heels. Sometimes when you're reading something, and this, for the most part, I want to say this only really happens with indie comics, where I'll pick something up and I will just connect with it right away. It'll be, either something that just looked cool, or it's because I know the creative team, or something, it's based off of something that I knew about before. But sometimes I'll come across these indie comics where just first couple of pages, I know this is something that I am going to be completely head over heels with for the entirety of its run. Luna is definitely one of those comics. I could give you a few others. Homesick Pilots was one. There's a few others as well. But this is, it's by Maria LeVay. She does all the interiors, I believe. I believe she even does the lettering herself. So it's just visually stunning. Carmen was another one of these series, which, now thinking about it, interestingly, the fewer creators on a series, the more likely I think I am to attach to it like this. In my head, mentally just latch on to them. This, like I said, is Maria LeVay's baby. It is, she created it, she's writing it, she's drawing it, she's coloring it, she's doing everything. She has total creative control over this comic. So, of course, it is coming out like a passion project, and you can feel that love and that passion put into it. It's taking place, I believe, in the 60s or the 70s, the old hippie days, and this girl, Teresa, has wound up at a cult camp in the middle of the desert, where there's this one guy who they kind of seem to worship. There's kind of these secrets, and then it finds out the girls drink his blood, and it's addictive, but then they'll go through withdrawals if they don't have it. So, and she has these dreams, these prophetic dreams that she's had her whole life, and she doesn't know, what they are. There's so much symbols, there's so much symbolism on the pages in the art. If you are a fan of iconography, symbolism, modern art, I would say I could even throw into that. Please do yourself the kindness of picking up Luna. It is just completely phenomenal. I believe Maria LeVay is Spanish, from Spain, if I do recall. And this week's variant cover, she's had some really fun variant covers. The first week was Jenny Frison, who is, of course, one of my absolute favorite artists. The second week, I should say month, second issue was Mirka Andolfo, who is a Italian artist and writer who I follow, who is a ton of fun. And then this week we have Chris Anka, who is a artist who is just, he's a lot of fun, and seeing his cover here, you kind of understand this is the sort of stuff that he draws. So, and then the next couple of weeks we have the other issues. We'll have the other covers revealed. I know for issue 4, let's see, the artist of that is Ariella Christiana, and then Criancina, I don't think I pronounced that right. And then Justine Franny is for issue number 5. And I believe this is the final issue, will be number 5. That will come out in June. Oh gosh, I'm gonna be sad when this is over. I'm already just, it's number 3 already, and it's such a great series. I can't recommend Luna enough. We've also got Spider-Woman number 11 coming out this week, which is by Carla Pacheco and stars, of course, Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman. Carla Pacheco's Spider-Woman has been very fun, and I mean that, I really do mean that. It's been a bit of a wild ride, but as of the 10th issue, I feel like all of the stray hairs and, you know, the fraying bits of the story fell into place for me really, really well. And now I feel like I have such a firm grasp of what she's doing with oh my god, with Jessica here. Let's say Jennifer. There's too many J names in the Marvel universe. Please stop. And this has been really fun. She put Jessica through the ringer, kind of, basically, and now she's kind of on the other side of it, but there's still some problems that she's going to have to deal with due to the whole everything that's been happening in the first 10 issues. I have been really enjoying this. The art is phenomenal. It is by Pere Perez. He really gets her everything. And you know, I really loved, they started the series off with a new costume, and I really loved that, but now they're back to the classic costume. I'm kind of sad that we don't have the new costume anymore, but again, like I said, the pieces kind of fell into place perfectly in issue 10, and with that was the purpose of the costume not continuing now. So, it makes sense that she only had it for that certain amount of time based on what was happening in the story. But part of that, now that I'm thinking about that, part of that was she needed to be basically a hero for hire for money. And that's why she wanted to have a separate suit for her financial heroing versus her, like, Avengers heroing. Where she gets hired for security jobs and thing versus she's just out and about doing street level stuff as a hero. In that sense, I feel like maybe she should keep it. She did keep it. She didn't throw it away. So she still got it. So maybe we'll see it again if she still does these paying jobs, which was the whole point she made it in the first place. So that would make sense. So now she's back in her classic suit, which is basically the same exact suit that she showed up in her first appearance with very minor changes. So that's really fun. It's not a hard suit to get on board with. I'm glad she's actually, Pacheco has also done a great job with Pere Perez, the artist, of making sure that all of Jessica's outfits have been acknowledged. She even acknowledged her first appearance outfit. There was at one point that they drew it in one of the issues during a flashback scene. They acknowledged the outfit I didn't really like, that was more of the motorcycle jacket, by putting her in a motorcycle jacket. It's just the jacket she wears over her costume. It's not its whole own themed, like a motorcycle rider thing anymore, because that was weird. Point being, I've really enjoyed this. If you're a fan of Jessica Drew, I'm sure this issue will be a perfectly fine jumping on point. Actually, it says, as I'm looking at the cover here, it says classic costume, new villains, great jumping on point. There you go. So, I would definitely recommend this if you're a fan of Spider-Woman or of Jessica Drew, because this has been a superior arc, I suppose. It was a very long first arc. It was 10 issues. But it was, I would say, superior to what we saw in her previous series, which I did not quite enjoy as much. They were just fun. And this has a lot more backbone to it, I think. So, Carla Pacheco on Spider-Woman, definitely give... Woman? Did I say woman? Spider-Woman, definitely check that one out. Captain Marvel number 28 finds Carol Danvers learning magic, which is notable because magic is her kryptonite. It's basically her only Achilles heel, same way that Superman has 2 Achilles heel, technically. It's actually kryptonite and magic. Carol's is pretty much just magic. I imagine there's something else that you could do, like taking away... whatever it is. Her Achilles heel is magic. So now, she's gonna be, I guess, just learning magic. And of course, as I'm spotlighting, this is written by Kelly Thompson. Not to be confused with Kelly Sue DeConnick, who was the first Carol Danvers Captain Marvel writer. Even if you go back as far as her the first time wearing that suit, that was Kelly Sue DeConnick as well. But Kelly Thompson has been handling this whole run, all 28 issues of this Captain Marvel series. It has ups and downs. Recently, I think more up than down, so that's excellent to be able to report. And here we have Carol, after a failure of, in her eyes, a mission, which wasn't really a mission. She was kind of sucked into the into the future. Failed to stop the guy who was there. He showed up possibly in the past somewhere, so he's still going to be a problem in the future because he escaped. And then she pops up back in her regular timeline and is pissed off that with his magic he was able to basically prevent her from stopping him. And so it makes sense now that she is learning magic. The cover says Sorceress Supreme. Obviously that's not going as far as that. The suit, she is getting a new outfit with this too, which I am loving. I'm really digging how much Kelly Thompson and her various artists, there's been too many of them, I wish they'd just stick with one or another. All the various artists seem to be putting out new outfits. They want to give her, even if it's just for one issue or even a few panels. I'm really loving all the different variations of outfits we're getting for Carol. It's something that happens with characters like Deadpool a lot, which Kelly Thompson has also written. And then they make all these action figures like Pirate Deadpool. He wore that for what? And then in the X-Men Deadpool, he literally wore that for like a panel. And they made a figure of it. So anyway, just if anybody from Hasbro is listening, you can totally do that with the series of Captain Marvel. She's had so many outfits and variations of her standard outfit that you could put on, and people would love it because they are so popular with the fans. Anyway, the last issue ended with her, for lack of a better term, hooking up with Doctor Strange at his sanctum, which makes a lot of sense going into this arc where she's studying magic, because now they're studying magic together. They probably have, some fun flirtatious moments. They're really relaxed. It's going to be this is going to be a really fun issue. If you don't think this is going to be a really fun issue, and I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. You probably shouldn't be reading this series, because this is the kind of stuff that happens in the series. But you're going to have to remember, her whole point here is that she wants to become good enough, or strong enough, I suppose, that she would be able to stop the villain Ove, who was the guy from the future, who was the spawn of Enchantress and Namor. So that's complicated, obviously. And we don't know where he is now, so I'm not really sure if this arc is going to end with her finding Ove or what, but I'm really enjoying it. And we have covers by the always fantastic Marco Corchetto, who is currently doing the art on Daredevil, which I cannot sing enough praises about itself, the art and the writing. And we do have a new artist again for this issue of Captain Marvel. Thank God the guy from the last issue was not sticking around because it was terrible. Giacomo Campani is the new artist. Every 3 or 4 issues, they switch the Captain Marvel artist, and it throws people off, because literally everybody who I've talked to about it has agreed with me on that. If you don't agree, I'd love to find out, because I've not met anybody who doesn't agree with that, but it's really annoying, and I wish they'd just stick with one artist. But Kelly Thompson I feel like she has been pushing weights, bulking up her ability to write Carol really well, so this is going to be really fun. I think the whole Carol Stephen Strange thing makes sense for where she is at this point in time with her character, so we'll kind of see what happens with that, and it's just going to be fun. There's not really a whole lot to expect besides that. Monstress is another indie title, and if I'm being honest, another indie title that falls into that category of me having immediately known that it was something special. since we are kind of talking about women and Asian characters a lot in this episode, this is, of course, this whole world that Monstress takes place in is based in Asian culture. So it's written by Marjorie Liu and drawn by Sana Takeda, who I believe is a Japanese artist who has been sprinkled throughout Marvel mostly, but her work on Monstress has been literally award-winning. It is so good she has won awards over how good this is. Also, Marjorie Liu has won awards about how good her writing is on this series. Every person I have ever suggested to read Monstress to and has read Monstress has, like, actually reached out to me to thank me afterwards. People love this series. I will tell somebody who is an acquaintance, read this series, and if they did it, they will reach out to me. I have had this happen to me. Monstress is that good. Especially if you are a person who leans towards, I'll say Japanese culture, like manga and things like that. This leans heavily on that for inspiration as well. Of course, with a Japanese artist who has that kind of past of her own, of course it would. The society that Monstress takes place in, I suppose you could say, is entirely matriarchal, to the point that you do not even need a man to have a child in this world. Two women can have sex and can result in a baby. No sperm, nothing like that involved. That's how matriarchal this society is. And I'm also just looking at the cover. I think I want to get 2 copies of this issue and frame one of the covers because this is beautiful. I don't want to really give that much away. I normally spoil the heck out of everything I talk about, but I don't want to give that much away about Monstress because the context also would take so much explaining, but it is just it's complete work of art. You know, it's I love it. The cover of this, it's Micah is the main character, so it's got the cover is her, and it has her aunt, who is a warlord character, who has this really amazing, almost beak-like mask that she wears, and then I think it's actually her mother on the cover as well. Her mother is deceased, which is not a spoiler, that's something that basically starts off telling you. And then their mother, her aunt and her mother's mother, which is the ancient wolf queen, which the praises that I could sing if I could sing about. They should write an opera about the character design for this. Sana Takeda she's a genius, honestly. That you could write complete operettas about the costume design that she draws in these issues. It is artwork. You should put them in a museum if these were real things. Like, oh my god. Giant monsters, spirituality, magic, demons, talking animals, animal people, gods, goddesses, alternate universes, kind of. Like, all of these are things that we touch on in Monstress. Plus war, genocide, WMDs, like, all this other crazy stuff, too, that's not really usually in fantasy stuff. Like, war, maybe, but, like, you don't usually get weapons of mass destruction in fantasy series. This is probably most easily described as a fantasy series. It's on 33rd issue here. I thought it was going to end last year, and I was so sad, and now I'm not, because it's still going. I literally can't say enough good things about Monstress, and anybody who has read it as well will agree with that. I have never met anybody who's read Monstress and not liked it, so absolutely fantastic team of Asian American women creators on this book, and just stunning content of it too. I definitely recommend Monstress to literally everyone. That wraps up the spotlights that I wanted to go on, kind of a little bit more in depth into those issues than these other ones. Continuing now forward with 2 indie number 1s, The Many Deaths of Lila Starr and Unicorn, which is spelled with a K. The Many Deaths of Lila Starr is by Ram V, who actually has another issue coming out this week, Catwoman. And Felipe Andrade, who I guess was a Captain Marvel artist. I will read the solicitation here. I actually can't find the solicitation here, but I will paraphrase what I read earlier. It's basically the corporeal person who is death has found a way to be on Earth, and people on Earth aren't dying since she's there. That's kind of the general thing. She's in Mumbai. Ramvi is a native Indian, not Native American, I mean like East Indian is what I meant there, writer. So I'm going to be really interested in seeing his take on an indie comic that he kind of has his own control of. I've read some of his DC stuff. It's kind of okay. It's good in some places. It's fine in others. But whenever I see an artist who I recognize from the big two, quote the big two, whenever I see them stray to indie projects, I like to pick those up because that's usually where they shine the most. This is from Boom. Unicorn is Unikorn. I'm not really sure what this is about. It's from the Scoot imprint of Scout Comics. Does that mean that it's a kid comic? It might be a kid comic. I honestly don't know. It's something about a teen finding a unicorn. And I just felt that sounded interesting, so I'm going to be picking that one up. We also have the Mighty Valkyries #1, which is following up with, Return of the Valkyries is 4 issues that came for the King in Black tie-in, and this is going to be following Jane Foster and the new Valkyrie as they continue on and do things that Valkyries do. It's written by Jason Aaron again with Torun Grombeck, probably said that wrong, and Mattia De Lui on art. I love Mattia De Lui. I probably mispronounced that one too. I love their art. Beautiful stuff. Highly recognizable. If you are familiar with their art, you will recognize it pretty much immediately when you see it. And it's going to be, I don't know, it should just be a little bit of fun following the two Valkyries as they do things. Looks like Loki's involved somehow, and Hela, which is fun because, she's Loki's daughter, so that's going to be a lot of fun. We also have Way of X #1, which is kind of like Nightcrawler's book, I guess you could say. There's a whole thing that Nightcrawler is like the priest of the X-Men, right? That's easily, you could say, is easily his thing. And I guess they're giving him his own more or less book, but I'm not sure what it's going to be about. It says, mankind has built a new Eden, but there are serpents in this garden. Some mutants struggle to fit in. Some mutants turn to violence and death, and the children whisper of the patchwork man singing in their hearts. Only one mutant senses the looming shadows, snared by questions of death, law, and love. Only Nightcrawler can fight for the soul of Krakoa. Only he and the curious crew he assembles, including fan favorites Dr. Nemesis, Pixie, and Blink, can help mutants defeat their inner darkness and find a new way to live. Okay, so that makes sense then about the whole... He's not really priesting them, he's just kind of guiding people. I guess away from whatever this patchwork man thing is. So that's kind of fun. Written by, Simon Spurrier. I know nothing about Simon Spurrier. The name does not sound familiar to me. But yeah, this should be good. Jonah and the Impossible Monsters #2. I picked up #1 honestly because of the Jen Bartel cover that was adorable, and I loved it. It was so simple. It was so simplistic, telling you. It was one of those things where it shows every little thing that it shows and tells you builds the story to add up to what you see as the world that it takes place in. Really fun, very simple, but at the same time, not. Hard to explain, beautiful art that is also simple, but not. I can't really describe things today except for that. But it's fun. Jonah and the Possible Monsters #2. I'll pick it up because I got the first one for the Jen Bartel cover, but I really ended up enjoying it a lot, so that's always fun when that happens. Eternals #4 continues Kieran Gillen's rewiring of the Eternals as we know them. Really, really have enjoyed it. 1 through 3 have been educational to what the Eternals and who they are, as well as I don't know, it's just been really nice. I went into it pretty much with just a very basic knowledge of what the Eternals are, really, and kind of like a basic loose casting of names. And with the first issue, it was able to pretty much explain, I think, everything that I needed to know. And it's kind of continued on just like that since then. Anything you need to know about anybody is told as you're meeting it. I like to compare it a lot to what Jonathan Hickman was doing during the House and Powers of X, kind of re-initiating our understanding of how this stuff all works. I think it's perfect for new readers of Eternal stuff and people who are familiar with them, because it just resets that grounding of what they are, how this all works, and what's going on. And it's got the Thanos thing in it too. I think it was issue 1, it was the end of issue 1, I think it was, that we found out Thanos was there, and he's causing problems. So, because of course he is a deviant, the other side of the Eternals, whole complicated thing. Check it out if you're interested in low-key sci-fi stuff happening in comics. I really do think that he's doing an excellent job of, I guess you could say, modernizing this very, I guess now, common trope of the godlike people watching over the rest of us, you know? So Eternals has been really fun, and I'm also super looking forward to what we're going to hear about Thanos' role in that also going forward. X-Force number 19. X-Force is one of 2 Reign of X books that Benjamin Percy continues to write. I kind of dropped Wolverine. I love the character, but there was so much that I just didn't care about happening. And I couldn't get my attention to stay with the pages, so I kind of dropped it. But X-Force, I'm still really enjoying, and of course Wolverine appears in X-Force. With the whole new X-Men lineup, it'll be interesting to see how X-Force goes forward with Laura as the Wolverine on the X-Men team, and Logan as the Wolverine on the X-Force team doing the X-Force stuff. So that's a really fun idea that the 2 of them are both doing, working for the mutants. They're both on teams. The potential is boundless. I don't know. Really enjoy Benjamin Percy's X-Force, what he's been doing with them, kind of outing Beast as being the asshole that he is, while also showing Jean's, adding a little bit of the confirmation of her fluidity between her relationships with Logan and Scott. I think in certain things, I think like X-Men and something else, we had her and Scott kissing, not really romantically, it was like a peck. And they're clearly a parent unit taking care of their kids, which aren't really their kids, but it's genealogically they're their kids. And then she and Logan we had some scenes in X-Force where they were clearly getting it on in a hot tub together. So I really enjoy this, whatever you want to call this for Jean. I can't think of the word, but her ability to kind of, it's not a competition anymore. It's not a love triangle anymore. Everybody gets what they want, and I totally think it's empowering, honestly, for Jean that she has got these 2 guys in this situation. Now we're getting kind of more into kinky stuff, but I think it's great that she kind of like she has the parent unit with Scott, and then she kind of has the romance unit with Logan. I don't know, maybe you see it some other way, but based on everything that I've just gone on with this way too long, based on everything Hickman's kind of showed us, and also Percy, and also all the X-Writers so far, that's what I see, and I really enjoyed that they're allowing her to have that freedom, I guess is the word I was looking for. Catwoman number 30 is the Rom V Catwoman. I am getting this for the Poison Ivy stuff. I haven't been a huge fan of what he's doing with Catwoman, simply because it involves her kind of taking in children and being like their ringleader, and I just don't see where that works for her person. But okay, we can it'll eventually go away, hopefully, and we'll be back to something else. But for right now, there is some kind of side plot with Poison Ivy, who I am in love with. I mean, who I like, so, as she's not real. But it's, I guess, in the last issue we saw that either her or some version of her has been captured, and they're either going to kill her or try to kill her, or it's not really her. Because based on, I'm not really sure if Rom V is is following the continuity, or if he's trying to make his own continuity, because what the continuity says up to this point is that Ivy died in Heroes in Crisis and came back as a being of the living green, meaning she is entirely made out of plant matter. Pamela Isley is basically dead. Poison Ivy is all she is now. And then there was the Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy series that kind of showed that Ivy was able to duplicate herself. She could basically plant seeds of herself and whole bodies of herself could grow. And also she physically looks a little bit more like she's made out of plant life now. So seeing her in this Catwoman thing where they have now her captured and, you know, supposedly she just had this whole thing with Harley Quinn and called herself Queen Ivy, and now she's captured. And I gotta assume it's not actually her. It's just some version of her that she, you know, caught them with or let them catch, I guess. But who knows? I guess hopefully we'll see in this issue. There's a couple more issues of Ivy as one of the characters showing up in the Catwoman, so I'm really excited for that, and hopefully we'll see quite a bit of her because I like it. And finally, to wrap up the pull list this week, Justice League number 60. I have gone on about how I feel like DC pump faked us with the team lineup, and then it ended up being not as interesting as it was gonna be. I guess the reason that I'm still interested in reading this is because I want to see what it's like with Naomi on the Justice League team, and I want to see Black Adam on the Justice League team, which, by the way, that whole Shazam thing they were doing, which was stupid, that was just a publicity stunt. He's still going by Black Adam, or just Adam, which is the thing that makes the most sense in any universe, so stupid publicity stunt thing. It was so dumb. Shazam is so stupid. But anyway, Justice League number 60, I suppose I will pick that up just to see kind of what happens with him and Naomi. And that wraps up the comic book pull list this week. I hope you found some things on this pull list that sound interesting to you, and if you didn't, go check out your local comic book shop, because I can guarantee you they have some things that they can suggest to you that you will find interesting based on your actual interests. So, do that. They will love to take some of your money, because they need it. So, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Episode 5. Obviously, Episode 4 ended with a bit of an atomic bomb blowing up in everyone's faces by way of John Walker's illegally superpowered Captain America publicly decapitating one of the Flag Smashers with Steve's shield. It's a big whoa shit moment. Good thing we had a week to kind of let that settle. Now we have this week's episode, which started pretty much with John Walker kind of fleeing. He went off running through some abandoned buildings. I have to picture in my head how funny that must have looked, or rather how dark that must have looked from the crowd filming him having decapitated this kid with Captain America's shield, and then he just like looks up and looks around at them and runs off. Like, that must have been pretty sketchy looking. So he goes running through these abandoned buildings now in whatever country this is, I don't even remember, thinking about what he just did and kind of freaking out a little bit on the inside still because, you know, he just killed a dude in front of a live audience, literally. When he finally stops, it takes a matter of seconds for Sam and Bucky to catch up with him. They're obviously here, actually, it's not obvious. I kind of thought they were here to arrest him, but they actually are just here to take the shield, which, interestingly enough, seems to trigger him more than probably just trying to arrest him would have. Telling him that he's not worthy to have that shield seemed to be the thing that made him angry, other than, you just killed that kid. Very interesting point there. I guess they decided, Sam and Bucky, that this, you know, enough was enough, and now everybody can agree he's not worthy now. There's no argument there. He never should have had the shield in the first place. 2 against 1, one super soldier versus another, and another guy. So obviously Falcon and the Winter Soldier beat the fake Captain America, Super Serum be damned, and they take the shield, and I guess they just kind of leave him there, and he says some interesting things while they're kind of talking about how basically he feels like he did Lamar justice by killing this kid because he thinks that this kid killed him. And because he's kind of grouping the Flag Smashers as being all the same. It's like an eye for an eye. you killed one of us, so I'm going to kill one of you. And then we see later on why that kind of becomes, he gets himself out of that mind state, and kind of centers in on Carly a little more, and how that's going to be a little bit of a problem later on. So, we get a scene a little bit after that of Walker's, I suppose you would say, his trial. It's like a small, somewhat formal military tribunal looking thing that really all they do is tell him that he can't be Captain America anymore. He so obviously should have put it in jail for A, killing somebody with premeditated intention, obviously, and B, taking the super serum without permission, because there's no way that's just legal for anybody to do if they happen to come across super serum. Not that that's something that would happen really ever, but like, that can't be legal. I don't know. But during this trial, they basically give him his slap on the wrist, and he tries to argue with them to the point that he's eventually screaming, basically acting like, honestly, like Brett Kavanaugh, and you cannot convince me that that was not specifically their intention. Red face, screaming, angry man, basically just trying to say, I tried, and therefore you shouldn't be mad at me. It's not really how life works, so. When he does finally leave the room and go sit outside, I suppose that's his wife that he's sitting with. She's a lovely lady. I feel very sorry for her for having been caught in this situation. But they're approached by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who is actually Countess Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. Yeah, I said that, I think, right? As she so haughtily confirms as she introduces herself. How do you say that? Haughtily? Is it haughtily or hoftily? I thought it was haughtily, but then I've heard somebody say it the other way, and I figured they were right. I'm almost 30 and I don't know. Anyway, the Contessa was someone who was supposed to be introduced to us in the Black Widow movie first, but that obviously didn't happen. So here's the situation on her. I did a little research. She was introduced by writer Jim Steranko in 1967, and it wasn't until 1972 that she was brought into more standard Captain America comics by writer Steve Englehart. And while she was there, she was a member of S.H.I.E.L.D. and she dated Nick Fury, but here's where it gets a little bit more relevant. Obviously, Nick Fury could pop up at any moment. Gets a little bit more relevant. Nah, he's not going to pop up. He's in space. Gets a little bit more relevant. She ran an all-female secret agent team at one point, and then after that, you find out that her Italian background was a cover story, and she was really a Russian operative. Those 2 points make me think about Black Widow, where we're supposed to be introduced to her, I guess, the second time. Also relevant as hell, she then defects from S.H.I.E.L.D. and becomes the senior leader at Hydra, calling herself Madame Hydra. If you're familiar with the comics at all, Madame Hydra is a name you will definitely know, because there have been a couple Madame Hydras. One of which actually thinks that she's Jessica Drew's mother, Spider-Woman. She's not, in case you're wondering. But yeah, she becomes the new Madame Hydra, so, you know, it's very interesting. Eventually in the comics, she betrays Hydra to some other spy operation. But you see where we're going here. Hydra's, as it is, you kind of gone. She, as Madame Hydra, probably has a lot of friends in low places, or rather high places, but in, like, deep underground places, hidden, that she can kind of run with until she gets her operation up and running, whatever that may be. So she's clearly up to something. She basically tells Walker, you know, look out for my phone call. And when she asks, or when I guess his wife asks who she is, she gives her a card that's black on one side and white on the other, but doesn't say anything. So she's clearly got some clandestine shit going on. I think it's really funny as Julia Louis-Dreyfus in a Marvel movie, or Marvel show. When generations collide kind of thing, you know? So that's fun. I gotta wonder what her role in Black Widow is, of course, too. In this episode, we don't get to see too much of Carly and the Flag Smashers. This is a little bit towards the end, which I'll get into then. Sam goes to visit Isaiah once again, taking the shield with him. It's obvious he wants to heal some old wound by bringing it back, potentially leaving it with Isaiah, but that's not quite what happens. Isaiah is not happy to see it. He also My cat. He doesn't want to see it. He knows it's in the case that Sam's holding, but he tells him not to take it out. They have a long chat about Isaiah's experience, his tragedy that is his life, basically, again. And we learn even more horrible information, like that his wife died while he was in prison for those 30 years. They never gave him her letters. They told her he was dead, and the only way that he got out of that situation was by faking his death. So, what he tells Sam is what I've been kind of saying for my podcast about this show, and they come out and say it here, straight up. He says they're never going to let a black man be Captain America. He actually follows that up with, and no self-respecting black man should want to. We are obviously getting into some very, very complicated topics of, morality and race relations and people feeling certain ways about certain things when another person who is in the same situation feels a different way about the same thing. This is all, obviously, of course, very complicated things, especially between Sam and Isaiah. Their experiences as black men in America have been very different, but at the same time somewhat similar, and they have these very different outlooks on what Captain America means and what that is and what that shield stands for. So while he and Isaiah have totally different ideas of what the shield is, I think him going to visit Isaiah really solidified in his mind that he needs to right this wrong in some way. And that's hopefully we'll be seeing that, going forward. So Bucky tracks down Zemo meanwhile. Zemo went to, I guess, what is the Sokovia Memorial. It's obviously also another complicated situation where a country was destroyed and everybody just kind of went, all right. Neither of them seems to really be surprised to see the other there, and the scene ends with Ayo and her team taking Zemo off to Wakanda to be imprisoned there. And, ooh, that is gonna be rough, I bet. They do not like him. But, I'm sure we'll see him again later. When Bucky sees Ayo off, he does ask her a favor, which becomes relevant later on in the episode. Sam returns home to New Orleans to help his sister out. Remember, she is having all the financial issues, and she's got the broken down fishing boat that she can't sell because it's so broken down, and she can't fix it because she doesn't have the money. It's a big, complicated situation, so Sam shows up, he thinks for a while, and he ends up calling in local favors from around the town that his parents, because they were really good people, and obviously his whole family was a local known family of fishermen. The whole town comes together, and they help her fix up the old fishing boat to sell. Bucky even shows up and flirts with her a little, which is hilarious, and Sam does not approve of. But it was really cute to see him be able to be just like kind of a normal guy for a second. And I definitely think that she was surprised that she liked him, because her face was kind of like, she did double take a little bit. It was cute. I liked it. Doesn't have to happen. Nothing has to happen. I just like the cute scene. It was nice. When they finish, basically his sister decides that she can't sell the family boat after all of this, and Sam and Bucky go inside, or they go and they have some bro time out back by the trees where they have the shield, like, range set up, I guess. While they throw the shield around in some honestly really visually satisfying ways, they talk. Bucky apologizes for having been so mad about Sam being unsure about taking the shield, because now he understands why this is such a complicated of a concept for a black man. It was a scene that would make people, probably a lot of people, uncomfortable for his raw honesty, looking his best friend, basically now, in the eyes and apologizing for a past wrong that involved race, which is something that Bucky realizes he couldn't possibly begin to understand. But you know what? It's a perfect example of how we right these wrongs and how we start healing as a whole, as a world. Before he leaves, Bucky gives Sam a box saying that it's from the Wakandas. It's a high-tech chest. You, me, and everyone knows this is the new Captain Falcon suit. I really want to see it. He doesn't open it. They know they're doing it to us. And then Sam gets a fun little training montage, which was such a classic fun TV montage-y style, with the lead up and the music and the arc of him getting better at throwing the shield. I loved it. It was so cheesy and fun. And still, he doesn't quite open the case to reveal what's inside, so I'm pretty sure we're going to see it pretty early on in the next episode, so that's something to look forward to. And then there is this scene with Sharon Carter, who you remember is still in Madripoor. She has been telling in the previous episodes Sam and Bucky, or whichever it was that she was working with, on some leads to help them with a flag smasher situation. So they haven't heard from her in this episode, I don't think. But then we get towards the end of the episode, she calls Bartrock the Leaper, who was the guy, if you remember, who fought Captain America in the beginning of The Winter Soldier. Then he appeared earlier on in this show as well. She calls him and tells him that she's got a job for him that she's going to pay double for. And that we eventually, actually through that context, we learn that she actually sprung him from prison, too. So I kind of assumed that this job would be to help Sam and Bucky, kind of force them into that uncomfortable situation, which would be funny, of course. But then when we get to the end of the show here, we see Bartrock meeting up with Carly's flag smashers, saying he's here to help kill Sam Wilson. Obviously, Sharon's motives immediately come into question. Why is she trying to help kill Sam? Honestly, a lot of people are saying that she's the power broker, which is a very interesting theory. Power broker is an as yet unrevealed, not really ruler, but like head honcho of Madripoor. It would almost check out, since she's had pretty much all the right information at the right time so far. But the only thing is, the real power broker wants Carly dead, so wouldn't she just send Bartrock to kill Carly if she was the power broker? That makes me think that maybe Bartrock is not here for Sam, but is here for Carly actually, and is just under some kind of general undercover somehow, you know? There's also the possibility that Sharon wants Bartrock to fail, or she knows he's gonna fail, and maybe has some kind of plan for using him until then, or whatever. In any case, this scene seriously brought her intentions into question, and also it's worth remembering, this is really cool, Sharon Carter in the comics was the one to, quote-unquote, kill Steve Rogers as Captain America after Civil War, making Bucky the new Captain America. So, things to remember, you know, they could pull from that. She tries to kill Sam, and then Bucky becomes Cap, and then they reveal Sam's not dead. I don't know. There's a lot of things that could happen here. A lot of speculation. At some point in the episode, we saw Walker talking to Lamar's mother, Lamar, of course, being his friend who was killed by Carly in the last episode. Basically, through the conversation, gets it into his head that the killer of Lamar deserves to die because Lamar died. And you can see the decision to hunt Carly down happening in his mind. You can actually see it clicking in his head that that's what he needs to do. And then we get this post-credit scene after the episode. Post-credit scene of him welding together and painting his own Captain America shield. First of all, no way in hell some slightly rando, let's say, at the very least, some slightly random dude who was in the army and who was a war hero, happens to be an excellent machinist, really honestly fantastic painter, and has, like, all of this stuff just at his access. Like, okay, whatever. Ignoring that, though, is he really that dumb? Or did they just not tell people that Cap's shield is made out of vibranium? Is that not general knowledge? Because, John, my guy, your hobby welding on this random scrap metal isn't going to make it work like the regular thing. And it certainly won't hold up from a hit from much, really. If it does, if this shield that he makes ends up doing any good at all, I'm gonna laugh. I'm sorry, but there's no way that random-ass John Walker is gonna go into his garage and make a shield that's gonna hold up to anything like the real thing at all, ever. That he could probably throw that on the ground, it would shatter. There's no way he could build it better than that, just because he can't. Like, where do these skills come from? Whatever. Hopefully it just falls apart when he tries to use it, because that's honestly the most realistic thing to happen. But again, we are talking about superheroes here, so I can't get that much into that picky stuff. It's all superheroes still. This Friday, we'll have the season finale, April 23rd, and I will be discussing it next Monday in full on the 26th, so that you have plenty of time to watch it and enjoy it, and, you know, I do too, so look out for that on the, 15A episode. This is 14A. 15A episode will have that, the finale of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and then I believe the week after that we will talk about the behind the scenes, as they did with WandaVision. They posted it the next Friday, so hopefully we'll have that to talk about in 2 weeks. Next week we'll talk about the finale, though, so look out for that. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of the episode this morning, bright and early, they released the first Shang-Chi teaser trailer. I have so much to say about this. There are so many reasons to be excited. I'm actually, honestly, more excited to talk about this than I was about the first two things. This is the thing that this is the golden child of this episode, is the Shang-Chi discussion. This is my favorite part. Here we go. So, woo, let's do this. Okay. There's so many reasons to be excited. So the traditional, they seem to be kind of giving him the traditional comics background for Shang-Chi, which is his father is the Mandarin. They trained him to be like the Mandarin, basically, and let him spend 10 years out in the real world to prove himself or make something of himself, and then coming back to face it all at the end and take up, you know, supposedly he's supposed to come back and take up the, you know, the reins or whatever. So, kind of going through the things that I'm excited about for this. First of all, speaking of women in any industry, really, and especially Asian women, Aquafina is playing what appears to be his newfound BFF, and I am so proud of her. I have been a big fan of Aquafina since I was in college. Her music is hilarious. She's had roles in blockbuster movies like Ocean's 8 and Crazy Rich Asians, which both, in my mind, are excellent work showing strong female characters and Asian characters in different lights than we might be used to seeing them in Hollywood. Nora from Queens is obviously an honest-to-God masterpiece of Asian American culture on display. It's on HBO, go watch it. Having her voice Sisu the Last Dragon in Raya and the Last Dragon was such a perfect casting and so exciting, and now she's here. Can I just take a second, though, to throw out at she might be Death Dealer? It would work, probably. The character that we know she's playing is Katie, not somebody from the comics as far as I know, genuinely unsure, but she seems to be a friend that he met doing a hotel job at some point in the US, and she ends up going with him to China. It looks like when his father summons him, I imagine. So she is also getting an action figure with this movie. It is unfortunately a Target exclusive action figure, but I'm getting that bitch. I am getting that shit. She's wearing a traditional looking red robe gown thing, I don't know names, with a bow and arrow, so clearly she levels up in the movie from car jockey to defender or a friend of Shang-Chi somehow, Shang-Chi. So that's really awesome. I'm so excited to see her role, whatever it is, if Death Dealer by a twist, or, you know, just Katie being a fun friend, or whatever it is. I'm so looking forward to that. Based on the trailer, Marvel has done really good work to make sure that this movie is going to be a positive but accurate portrayal of Chinese and Chinese American culture, with elements of, you know, kung fu fighting tied in very strongly, of course, as well. The American part of the movie takes place in San Francisco, which got me really excited because I lived in San Francisco for almost 5 years during college, and there's really no other place like it in the world. It's, I suppose, a close equivalent to a West Coast version of New York City, a closer equivalent to that than LA, but it still has its own true San Francisco flair that you don't get anywhere else in the world, honestly. And, notably, there is a very high Asian population in San Francisco. I myself lived with an 80-year-old Chinese woman for several years. Her name was Lily, and I got to see a lot of, I guess, true Chinese culture from her. Her habits, the way she decorated her food, the way she decorated her home, the food she ate, and everything she shopped for was all uniquely something that was not something I myself would normally see. She shared with me, on one point, her traditional Chinese New Year dishes, I remember, which was all some really hardcore, authentic Chinese foods my Western palate was not really sure about. But she was so sweet about it all, and I remember the next day she brought me, I had to look up the name for it so I could get this properly, Tang Yuan, which is I remember it was a sweet rice ball filled with, everything online says black sesame, but I swear it was poppy seeds that she had inside hers. I looked up recipes for it, and everything says black sesame. I swear to God, she had poppy seeds in hers. And it floats in a gingery broth, so, that was another thing I didn't really expect from her. She was so sweet for thinking of me, and when she handed it to me, she told me that it was for good luck so I could get a boyfriend, and interestingly enough, a few months later, I met my husband. Probably a few weeks later, honestly. It was that spring. So, yeah, experiences we have in life. The point is, the fact that this is taking place in San Francisco, for the US portions of it, is just chef's kiss. Beautiful. Although, yes, the reason for there being a high population of Asian Americans and especially Chinese across the West Coast like San Francisco is somewhat tied into past sins of America, like, concentration camps during World War II, forcing them into slavery to build our railroads, normal American history stuff. What all this boils down to is one glaring point. Representation matters in movies, and Asian representation is finally getting its dues. If you have an issue with me boiling basically these things all the way down to this point, too bad, basically, because it's just true. Tai Pham is a Vietnamese Green Lantern who my aunt recently sent me a TikTok about, where this white dad to a part Vietnamese daughter gave her Tai Pham's book, and saw how incredibly excited that she got immediately to see a kid in comics who looks like her, who was like her, partially Vietnamese. She was stoked. My own husband is half Filipino, first-generation American. A few years back, we picked up a Marvel comic that we heard would have the first Asian American, or the first Asian superhero team, because we figured that would be exciting, and it ended up being the first appearance of a new hero, the first Filipino one, to be exact. Her name is Pearl Pangan, and she goes by Wave, and has water powers, which makes sense because she comes from the beach village of Cebu, the same place where my husband's family is from. I remember him reaching that point in the story, reading that information, and he had tears in his eyes when he told me, she's from Cebu. He had tears in his eyes again this morning while watching the Shang-Chi trailer, because that shit matters. It's still cheesy superhero stuff when you get down and dirty with it, but with the widely loved global scale that MCU properties now are, this is a really big deal for a lot of people. So basically, this is bound to be a fun-as-hell movie. It looks like they're going to be doing the 10 rings, like armbands that you can power up with, which I suppose is a decent enough translation into live action. The rings as actual rings wouldn't really have worked out on film, I don't think. There also seems to be some flashbacks in the movie, potentially the history of the rings or the Mandarin character or something. And if Mandarin does sound familiar to you, besides the fruit, obviously, it's probably because you saw Iron Man 3 and mentally blocked out most of that from your memory. Just this morning, my husband and I were talking about how, honestly, just bad they made a lot of bad choices in that movie, including, obviously, the twist that Aldrich Killian was the Mandarin. I could handle that Ben Kingsley's character wasn't the real thing. That was fine. But then they tried to say that it was this stupid, weird, intense white dude. Yikes. And he was so forgettable. I literally had to Google his name to be able to say it just then. I had to Google it. It was such a dumb twist. The Ben Kingsley not being the Mandarin, sure, fine. It's not what we expected anyway. He's not Asian, sure. But then they made it this guy? Ugh. I do have to say one thing, thinking about San Francisco, it just popped into my head. Obviously, we're going to see some really cool, if you're from San Francisco, if you've lived in San Francisco or are familiar with the city, there's going to be some really cool things like the municipal transit, the SFMTA. We're probably going to see some of that. We actually saw some of those buses in the teaser trailer, so that's already really cool. No doubt there's going to be hotels, I'm sure will be recognizable, parts around the city, street names, things like that are going to be super recognizable. I'm sure they're going to show us as many bridges as they can. But I'm going to say this right now. if there is not a scene of the two of them going into a dim sum bakery, or just anybody, literally, I don't care who it is, if there is not a scene of somebody going into a dim sum bakery in San Francisco, that is an inaccurate portrayal of Chinese American life in San Francisco. And that is a fact. Those things are everywhere, and they are so goddamn good. If you have never been to a Chinese bakery, you are missing out. Get there early, though, because they tend to sell out if they're a good bakery, and you get all the Asian grandmas who show up first thing when they open to get the big boxes of the pork buns and things, and it's so good. I fully expect there to be a scene of a Chinese bakery in Shang-Chi, and if there is not, I'm going to write a sternly worded letter to Marvel. It really doesn't matter, but I should be in it. I haven't really figured out all the characters yet. Obviously, Aquafina is Katie, and Simu Liu is Shang-Chi. I keep correcting myself on that because I want to be saying it right. I don't want to spread around the Americanized version of it, because if they're going to be saying it right in the movie, I just got to jump on board with that now, get ahead of it. Shang-Chi they did it at Disney Investor Day, he said it Shang-Chi then, so I'm assuming they're going to be doing that in the movie. I gotta say it right. At least gotta put in the effort to say it right, at the very least. So, with the characters, as I was saying, I'm working on figuring out who everybody is, and I will update that as soon as it kind of becomes more relevant, if we get more teasers or more trailers or, more announcements or whatever as we get closer to the movie. But generally, overall, it looks like they took the right steps to make sure that the movie looks and sounds the right way to do justice to the character, history, and real-life inspirations of Shang-Chi. The locations are obviously great. The costumes look beautiful. Death Dealer's face is enchanting. I can't tell if it's makeup or some kind of rubber-fitted mask, but it's so lovely. And the actors are all great, well-known Asian American actors. And I have to mention the costume design again because it's so often overlooked, and I can already see this is going to be a visually heart-stopping movie. It's going to be so stunning, and I just cannot wait. And I have to add, I'm just so overwhelmingly... I'm just so happy to see an overwhelmingly positive response to this first teaser trailer right away. It's making people bring up things and talk about things like the tragedy of the Iron Fist Netflix show and the glory of Kim's Convenience and Nora from Queens, two stellar examples of normalizing Asian Americas being included on TV and in media. I so love it. And I can't wait for more of this celebration of Asian culture to happen as we get closer and closer to the premiere of this movie. It will come out on September 3rd in theaters. Make sure you get your vaccines and everything taken care of so that you can go safely support the first Asian period superhero in the MCU films. This is a big deal. If I haven't gotten that clear to you right now, I'm sorry, because I'm trying to be clear. This is a big deal to a lot of people. The reason that that Marvel Disney wanted to make sure that they were not doing one of these online and in theaters premieres, they want everybody to see this movie in theaters. They wanted to do this right by everyone who has some amount of their heart riding on this, and it's really, really nice to see that they're putting in that much effort. So, super excited. I'm gonna watch the trailer probably a few more times today, easily. September 3rd cannot come soon enough. Next up, X-Men #1. I had kind of talked about in the last episode how the new X-Men team was announced, the whole fan vote and everything came to a head, and the team was announced who the, I believe, 7 or 8 members, I believe 8 members of the team are going to be. So some really cool stuff. Obviously Scott and Jean were going to be in it, and they're probably the most boring members on the team, so that's actually good news because it's not boring. I did not realize it then. I think it was actually later that same day the news broke that this team was actually going to be premiering in their own X-Men book. X-Men #1 starting in July. So what does that mean for the X-Men book that we are currently getting? The last issue of Hickman's X-Men will be number 21, and then Gary Duggan will be the new writer for the new series starting in July. Duggan is currently working on Cable for Reign of X right now, which is also ending after the Hellfire Gala, so all of this really adds up. Although I do have some questions. What is Hickman doing while he isn't writing the main X-Men book? Jonathan Hickman, of course, is what I'm talking about here. He's credited as the head of X on many of the X titles, so I imagine that he's still in charge of the overall X-Men universe, but he's stepping away from doing any actual writing for it as far as I can tell. This could mean that he's busy working on the next big step for the X-Men universe, which is taking up all his creative efforts, perhaps. In which case, I'm very excited, but if this is somehow him stepping back from the project as a whole, I would not be happy, because I'm still desperate to see his vision played out, as I do believe he has a very firm and solid vision for the future of the X-Men, and I think it's going to be a couple of years before we even see anywhere near that getting completed, so hopefully he's just working on the next big thing, and Gary Duggan can just pick up... Is it Jerry Duggan or Gary? I think it's Jerry. Jerry Duggan can pick it up, in July. Also, kind of a cool thing Marvel's doing. They have this Stormbreakers thing they're doing right now, which I have critiques of for reasons, but that's not what's important. The Stormbreakers are, I believe it is 8 artists who they picked out of their lineup of, they're not Marvel exclusive artists, but I don't think any of them do DC. I could be wrong about it. They're just not Marvel exclusive. I'm not sure what it was that you had to do to be picked as a Stormbreaker artist versus just a regular artist. I imagine they're people who do covers and interiors, although several of them do mostly covers and very few interiors, if any. So, not really sure about that. But the point I'm making here is they have a series of connecting covers for X-Men #1, starting at X-Men #1, which is featuring the whole new lineup of the X-Men team, and each character is drawn by a different one of these Stormbreaker artists. So the 8 characters of the new X-Men team are drawn by 8 different artists. Honestly, it makes my brain kind of go squiggly when I look at it, because the different art styles are all different, and it just kind of makes my head go fucky. But it's cool. I love the connecting covers. I love that they're letting these guys do the different characters and different styles, and I'm glad that they're actually doing something with the Stormbreaker title, because for a while it looked like they were just giving them the title and that was kind of it. So at least they're drawing stuff for it, I guess. And it's all good artists. I just don't understand, like, what was the criteria to make someone a Stormbreaker artist versus not. I don't know. But that's something to look forward to with your curious minds if you're an X-Men fan, or if you're a Jerry Duggan fan. I know he was doing an excellent job on Cable, and he is doing a fantastic job on Savage Avengers as well, where he does write a few X characters. I know Magic has been in the book quite a bit, so hopefully we'll be seeing some of that more fantastic writing when he starts up X-Men in July. And finally, to wrap the episode up, I have a little bit of a downer. I'm sorry, I saved it to the end, so hopefully there's less people listening. I hope everybody listens to the end, honestly. I always do, but, you know, I'll take what I can get. Regarding a few CW DC shows, it would appear that Black Lightning and Supergirl have been cancelled to make room for Superman and Lois. As I have been catching up on the Black Lightning show and honestly completely loving it, I am now caught up, and I was saddened to learn that it is in its final and 4th season. Looking into this information, I found that it's apparently this show and Supergirl that are both getting cancelled for the sake of Superman and Lois getting a bigger time slot and potentially larger audience. You can't see me, but I am a human, but why not both gif right now? That is my face. There's literally no reason they couldn't have had 2 superhero families on their network. Especially since the shows and families on them are completely different. Totally different styles of shows. Totally different dynamics and relationships and everything. Totally different representation for different types of audiences too, I think. I don't see much crossover happening besides, like, people like me who just like stuff. I don't see much crossover happening between these audiences. I don't see people leaving Black Lightning and going to Superman and Lois. I don't know. I just don't see that happening. And for Supergirl, I know her ratings have fallen since she came to the CW, but that's not a good reason to end a show. That's a good reason to make it good enough to end it proudly at a comfortable spot. I will always have a soft spot for that show in my heart. I'll never say anything terrible about it, because the first few episodes of that show were remarkable in my opinion, but as sad as it's going, it really does put a bad taste in my mouth about all of this. I have really enjoyed Superman and Lois so far, but now I'm seeing it in a slightly darker light. I don't know. When it returns later this month, we'll have to see how I feel about it then, if I will continue watching it. Because I'm not really sure, to be honest. After finding this information out, if I do see anything else that makes this, kind of confirms this, that will, I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see when we get there. And because I hate ending things on a negative note, I just pulled up an article I found on Twitter that apparently has a quote from Aquafina about her character, Katie, in the Shang-Chi movie. And as I pull this article up, it is on Entertainment Weekly. It's got a picture of Simu Liu in his Shang-Chi outfit. And my god, it looks phenomenal. They did such an amazing job. It's just like an HD picture. This is super high def picture of like his full outfit down to his knees. He's got the wooden staff. It looks like red leather wrapped on both ends. The center is just the regular wood. The same red leather that's on his coat. You know, the coat he wears in the comics, that's just the red, you know, buttoned up tight kind of with the I don't know what you even call the collar that's like the priestly collar but without the white part. I have no idea what the terminology for clothing is. But whatever that suit is he wears in the comics is just red and black, very simple. They translated that to the movie. Oh my god, it literally looks like if you just made him live action. And I don't know how, somehow, Simu's face is like the correct shape and hair and everything. They did a great job casting him. But I'm just going to scroll down and look for the Katie portion of this, because I hate ending things on a bad note. When we're scrolling, we're seeing director quotes. We're seeing, this is kind of a fun quote. Here we go. Here's Aquafina. It was, okay. It was a level of Asian representation that I haven't seen, and I thought it was cool as an Asian American to watch. Filming this is what he says. Is what she's saying. Adds Crazy Rich Asian star Aquafina, who plays Shang-Chi's close friend Katie. It definitely explores different levels of identity. There's a different quote in here from her somewhere, I know, but this is like a really long... Oh, here we go. She says, she doesn't do a lot of heavy lifting, Aquafina says, but at the end of the day, she has a real heart, and she has a loyalty and dedication to her friendship with Shang-Chi. She's super brave. Cool. So it doesn't sound like she's probably not a villain, but, you know, always keep that option open. There are other women in this who could be the villain, because I think the going theory right now is that Death Dealer is a woman. But it's kind of like, you know, in disguise. I'm just seeing this other quote here that I want to read just because I'm coming across it. It's I believe the director is saying, "Remember, the Asian culture is so diverse. I grew up in Hawaii, and Hawaiian food is like Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Hawaiian, Filipino, all mixed together. That is kind of what our crew was. It's like a big mix of Asian cultures coming together and responding to the script and saying things like, oh, that doesn't feel quite right. And all that helped contribute to what I think is a really beautiful update to what started in the comics a few decades ago." Okay, that I feel better about ending the episode now. We can end the podcast now, because that was a lovely quote from the director of Shang-Chi talking about how they were able to integrate Asian and Asian American cultures into the film and into the set and everything accurately, because that's who was making the movie. This is so exciting. Especially at a time like this where there is so much anti-Asian verbiage around, for bullshit reasons, to be honest. Complete bullshit reasons. This is very exciting for so many people. And that ends the episode. I am going to be posting my next episode. It'll be coming this Friday, the 23rd, and it will be covering comic book picks, things that I enjoyed from this week's comics, probably mostly coming from the polls that I talked about this week, and possibly some other things depending on what I end up actually picking up. You can find me online. My Instagram is Anna with the Comics. My Twitter is Savage She-Geek. And my website is www.sensationalshegeek.weebly.com. If you have any kind of questions, comments, concerns, anything to add, please let me know. This podcast is available pretty much anywhere podcasts stream minus Pandora. I should check on that. I don't know what's taking so long for it to get approved on Pandora. But if you are watching on anywhere that you can subscribe, please do so and rate if you can. It will get people to be more, get people to be able to see this a lot better. And it will also make me feel good about myself. I love making this podcast. I don't know how many people regularly listen, to be honest, but I love talking about all this stuff, and I hope that somebody's on the other side enjoying me discussing it and getting sweaty about this. So I will be back again on the 23rd? Friday the 23rd for episode 14B. In the meantime, have an excellent week. Find something to get sweaty about, and be kind to your fellow human beings.